Thank you, David, and congratulations, Mazel Tov or commiserations. It is my great pleasure to introduce Eitan Neishlos as the Chairman of Courage to Care New South Wales, who is a passionate promoter of Courage to Care values, of which you are all aware. That is to inform, educate Australians about the dangers of prejudice, racism, and discrimination. As an entrepreneur, Eitan is co-founder of the Resonance Group of companies. He has 15 years of experience as corporate attorney and served on private and public boards for large multinational organizations and technologically related entrepreneurial enterprises. Eitan also serves as a deputy and executive on the board of Jewish Board of Deputies and is a member of the Weizmann Institute of Science, the President's Council of the New South Wales Art Gallery, and the Eitan Next Generation Philanthropy Group New South Wales Art Gallery. Without further ado, I give you Eitan. And I'm sorry it's been so long, Eitan. Well, welcome. Over to you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I appreciate it, and it has been too long, so I hope we'll be able to catch up in person sooner than later. Good afternoon, honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen here in Australia and abroad. I'm honoured to be your guest speaker on this auspicious occasion, the 25th AGM of B'nai B'rith's Syd Einfeld unit, an organisation very close to my heart. Speaking to you through Zoom is a sad sign of the times, but hopefully you will still feel my respect, passion, and commitment to our Jewish community. At the end of my speech, I will welcome questions from all of you. At the expense of being a little bit repetitious, I thought I'll just mention a little bit about myself, although it's just been covered. But yes, I'm a director of the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies. I'm chairman of Courage to Care in New South Wales, which is under B'nai B'rith in Australia. I am an experienced director and advisor, including chairing and advising several multinational and Australian boards in the areas of technology, security, and the media. My journey with Courage to Care, which creates awareness of the dangers of prejudice, racism, and discrimination, actually started decades ago with a young girl called Tamara Zisselman, my late grandmother. Like many of your relatives, she suffered through the Holocaust, only being saved from certain death when at just 15 years of age, she was hidden by Christian locals, Janina and Piotr Chedesovich, when Jews were being rounded up to be massacred. After the war, like millions of other Jewish people, Tamara's life, free of death, free of hate, free of prejudice, seemed to just begin. Tamara was married a few years later, and eventually she gave birth to 2 children, one of whom was my mother, Hannah. In 1966, Janina, Oita, and Antonia Chodasevich were all honored at Yad Vashem as righteous among the nations for their remarkable bravery in hiding and protecting my grandmother. Stories like my grandmother's, and indeed of all of my late grandparents, and no doubt many of your relatives, is why keeping history alive is so important, so we can educate new generations. Education and awareness can change the attitudes and behaviors of so many people. We must create awareness of the dangers of prejudice, racism, and discrimination, as every individual can and should make a difference to not only Australia, but to our world. So you can see why Courage to Care is so intertwined with my life and why such an organization is very personal to me. Now let me tell you a little bit about Courage to Care. We provide educational programs and workshops for children, young people and adults to inform them of the dangers of prejudice and discrimination. We want this generation to be a generation of upstanders, not bystanders, and take positive action if they witness prejudice or bullying. We believe every individual can make a difference. I joined Courage to Care as I strongly believe the burden of this message has been left with a handful of people. Instead, it should be intergenerational and passed on through generations. Courage to Care is blessed with incredible assets. Its members, volunteers, and an incredibly hard-working committee. Its curriculum has been nurtured for more than 20 years and reached more than 200,000 young people. So you can see how incredibly strong our foundations are. But like most organizations, we want to continue growing. Let me tell you how. Together, we can do just that. I'm absolutely intent on raising the profile of Courage to Care, so it's at the hearts and minds of every Australian. I'm dedicated to not only preserving the important legacy between Courage to Care and B'nai B'rith, but to boosting this relationship. We can move forward together through the use of technology and important partnerships. We are already sending our message to students in Australia through digital channels, and I hope to create a model for message distribution, which can be used in other parts of the world. B'nai B'rith was established in 1843. Now, in 2021, I cannot speak highly enough of the gratias and importance of this organization, which has united and helped so many Jewish people throughout the world. And now, with the solid backing of B'nai B'rith, Courage to Care can become the forefront of its social justice platform and grow beyond Australia, to be distributed globally through your organization. Our relationship with B'nai B'rith and its financial support is paramount to not only our existence, but to our future. It will empower and embolden us to seek and develop broader relationships in the community. And so I will take this opportunity to thank you for your earlier vote and overwhelming support to continue to provide your grants to Courage to Care. My dream is for Courage to Care to become the jewel in the crown of B'nai B'rith's social justice platform, sending our message to young people within B'nai B'rith throughout the world, utilizing Courage to Care's successful, tried and tested model with enhancements in areas of technology and strategic partnerships. It would make our incredibly important message both global and intergenerational. Ladies and gentlemen, we know education is needed to change attitudes and behaviors of so many people. We must create awareness of the dangers of prejudice, racism, and discrimination, as every individual can and should make a difference to not only Australia, but to our world. And with your help, I believe we can do just that. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. Thank you for listening, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Very much for that, Eitan. Are there any questions? Can you put me on full view? No, not speaking. Yeah. Any questions from anybody?
If you have any questions, just unmute your microphone and speak.
You are. Unmuted.
Yeah, thank you, Robbie.
Well, if there's no questions, I'm always available to B'nai B'rith at any time. You can always contact me directly, and if there's any questions that I can answer from time to time, I'll be happy to do so.
Are they only doing the inclusions, or are they doing exhibitions? Are they doing?
You're on to speak.
Hi,
Don't do that. You're on.
I'm on. All right. We used to do just. We are retired volunteers, but we went to Moree and we went to all these centres and it worked well. Are we still doing exhibitions, or will we be still doing exhibitions after the COVID crisis lets us? And how are the incursions working with the school visits? are you still getting access into the schools?
Okay. So thank you very much for your question, and also thank you for being a volunteer. We have over 100 volunteers today, and every time I spend time with them, I'm honestly just inspired. To answer your question, the model of the exhibitions, the face-to-face exhibitions, and bringing Holocaust survivors to young adults to speak to them, and really spending quality time so that we're not just giving a history lesson, but we're genuinely educating people to behave differently. That is an outstanding model. And that's the one that I referenced in my speech, that is truly tried and tested. Don't fix something that works. It works incredibly well. The challenge that we have with the exhibitions, however, is that it's difficult to scale up. So although we've reached over 200,000 young adults over 20 years, actually the scope is 200,000 a year just in New South Wales. You know, what is the scope in Australia? What is the scope beyond? So we have to accept our limitations. And so there is a strategy not to replace the exhibitions. And just in part to answer your question, we just held a very successful one in Albury, and we reached 2,000 young adults there. So that's definitely working, and we're not going to replace it, but we want to amplify it. We want to boost it with alternative and additional strategies. And that's where I think technology is very important, and that's where I think partnerships can become very, very important. There are other organizations, for example, that are covering some of our subject matter. We could license out our curricula to them. Now, partnerships like that would mean that our message gets to more people. Yes, it would be more diluted, but you know, at least we've got a reach, and then we bring them closer and closer until they've, please God, met a Holocaust survivor or had a physical touch point to the exhibition. So we're very much looking to scale up and grow through all of these new utilities, but in no means will they expire the existing strategy of the exhibitions.